Next question then. Can you explain what the birth of the ITCCS was in 2010, its focus and court cases, please?
Well, after I got shut out of Canada after the apology, which under the law, an apology means a defense of your action. So legally, it meant we didn't do anything wrong. You can think we're apologizing. In fact, what we're doing is just indemnifying ourselves legally. No one ever goes to jail, that kind of thing. But when that apology came in and everything was wrapped up, I got an invite to come over to Dublin the next year, 2009, and to Italy by human rights groups there. They wanted to hear about, they'd heard of my name and everything, and as one door closed in Canada, another opened up in Europe. So we formed, by we, I mean a lot of survivors of the Catholic Church in Ireland were having these protests and a lot of movement on the ground. There were thousands of people in the streets in Ireland when the first revelations of things like the Magdalene laundries where children were worked to death by the Catholic Church. All of that stuff was beginning to come up. They even found a mass grave of 800 babies and newborns with their skeletons chopped up. It looked like ritual killing in a cistern in Tuam, Ireland on the west coast in Galway. And so this stuff was all coming out. So they invited me over. They said, what can we do? Because the courts, the arrangement, the Catholic Church is writing the official report on their own crimes, just like in Canada. So they wanted to get my advice. And so I said, look, we got to get united across borders here, right? And we set up this tribunal to do exactly that. Unite survivors, because we were taking on multinational corporations, including the oldest one in the world in Rome. And at the same time, I got invited to Italy and some groups there. And that was a real ball we had in Italy, because we were doing exorcisms right outside, right in St. Peter's Square. We're having protests, and like, they didn't know what to do with us, right? There was me and some natives we brought over from Canada, and they were freaking out. But it was interesting because one of the senators, an Italian senator called Furio Colombo, he took me aside and he said, when you take on the Catholic Church, you got to realize something. And this is a guy in his 80s. He's this seasoned politician. He said, the mafia, the Vatican, the government, they're all the same people. And they only care about one thing, their money. They're all the offshore accounts, the Vatican processes, the Vatican bank processes a lot of these offshore accounts, and the drug money and the arms things and all of that channel. And they don't want that affected. So, you got to watch yourself. He threatened me. He was worried for me, right, that I'm standing there in St. Peter's Square. But when you do these things boldly, you have a protection. And I can't explain what that is, but that's why I'm hopeful, because I never would have thought it would have gotten this far. But I think it shows the weakness of the system, and that's because we united people. We set up an international tribunal to not just document, but bring criminal charges. We had 2 common law court cases that helped force Pope Benedict out of office, indicted Queen Elizabeth, the whole bit, right? And all sorts of things have sprouted up from that, including the present awareness of the child trafficking, the satanic rituals. That came out of all of the work we were doing 10, 15 years ago and beyond that. So, it shows you how it works, right?
Absolutely. So evidence arose from these ITCCS works, including high-level child trafficking, like you just said, and satanic ritual torture killing involving Dutch and British royals, Vatican, organized crime. What's the Ninth Circle?
That's as far as we can tell from eyewitnesses and a few Vatican documents that we uncovered, there was a source in the Vatican Library who actually, a little bit of a background, this librarian in the Vatican, he doesn't work there anymore, but he released to the London Observer in 2004, I think it was, a copy of that policy, Crimen Solicitatis, whereby in the Catholic Church, if child rape is reported, it's immediately covered up. The police are not to be told. And it's a standing policy to do that going back to 1929. Well, the same guy who leaked that document also shared with people who gave it to me through kind of a back channel, a thing called the Ninth Circle. It was a reference to the Circle of Nine, or the Ninth Circle, set up by the Jesuits in sometime in the 1700s. There were different dates referred to. And basically it's a child sacrificial network. And it was used initially to control politicians, popes, others. They're invited, and one of the eyewitnesses, Anne-Marie van Bienberg from the Netherlands, she took part in one of these Ninth Circle ceremonies. She had been lured there by her husband who is part of the cult, and they thought they were going to a dinner. Next thing she knows, there's a child on an altar, and the whole thing's being filmed. Bang! At that point, they blackmail judges, politicians. They entrap them that way, and that's one of the things. But it's also a system of energy vampirism, where in the Catholic Mass or the Satanic Black Mass, it's believed that you are given life and rejuvenation through the blood of the innocent, and the suffering of the innocent. And they literally believe that. And so there's that close parallel. I really believe it's one and the same ritual, but we began to document this on the ground. Eyewitnesses, Anne-Marie, Toos Nienhuis. You can see these links online. Toos was raised, these are intergenerational satanic families tied in with the Catholic Church. She was brought as young as 2-3 years old to places like Carnarvon Castle in Wales. She mentioned seeing Mountbatten, Prince Philip, various popes taking part. Basically, the children are tortured horribly, killed, their bodies are cut up, and they're eaten. It's a form of quote communion when they're feeding off, and anyone who doesn't take part are themselves killed. And there's all sorts of even more grisly things that she describes, but the point is that this ninth circle's referred to, it's attested to by not only eyewitnesses, but even church people who, you see, the beauty of doing a public hearing is that you start, your enemy starts falling out. The divisions are created. People start panicking, and people come forward. Insiders come forward. And I've spoken to these people, right, who have witnessed these things, who have, or are part of the police network of protection. Like one of the things they do in outside Brussels, there's a field they use. And there's me and Toos on film walking around this place, and she's showing where the kids were buried and everything. And the police and the soldiers in Belgium cordon off these areas, and because it's the royal families, the Dutch, Belgian, British royal families, so-called, are involved in all these things, and it's centuries old, and it probably goes back to even well before that. You know, if we know anything about the way power works in human history, yeah, these things have been around, but it's now backed with a lot of big money. We learned that Drangheta, which is the name of the European mafia, provide a lot of the children from like youth detention centers, foster homes, Catholic orphanages. There's a strong connection between Drangheta, the mob, the Vatican, different royal families. And, you know, I mean, it's not that the problem isn't the lack of evidence. It's what do you do with it? Where do you take it? The only recourse is for us to force it. But then, you know, you're up against a huge system of power and vested interest. And I don't think any system is immortal. I mean, it's starting to come apart as we see now, but you have to set an example. You have to create that alternative energy that Sun Tzu talks about. Take back your chi, create your own courts, your own assemblies, your own media where you're documenting this stuff, and then they have to respond. But if you go to them all the time, to their courts, to their media, forget it. It's suicide, you know.